I am so happy that you're able to at least that I can hear you. That is great, and I'm so happy that everybody gets to hear your brilliance today.
Same,
Um,
same.
I will. We're going to go a little over because we started a little late, but that's okay.
Totally.
We'll whoever can hang can hang. I want you to start if that's. I mean, I was just about to go into the trendy wellness practices that I've never tried, but I'd love for you to dive in if you're ready to
Oh my gosh,
share.
I love that.
Yeah, what haven't you done? Because as you can see, although I can't see her, I have seen her. Andrea is like aging like gorgeously. I'm
Oh,
48, she's 59. Neither one of us are on HRT. There is a way to reverse engineer like, aging well, and some of it's avoiding some crazy biohacks. So please tell us, Andrea, what have you not done?
yeah, and I was listening to you even when I couldn't get on. So, you have such a powerful story, Alisa, and you bring so much to this space. So I'm just so excited to talk about hormones and at different phases too, and what the wellness industry tells us. So the first thing I always want to tell people is there's no right or wrong or bad or good. So if something's working for you, embrace that and tune in because I know if we talk about what works for us or what doesn't, there can be a lot of triggering thoughts around that. So, the one thing I really want to highlight, and we can definitely talk about BHRT, but I want to talk about high protein diets because it's all the rage. You and I have both been in this industry long enough that we've seen the different
Like over
crazes
30 years ish.
and seeing them all translate. And I want to just say about protein, yes, protein does feed muscle, and muscle is metabolic currency. But when it comes to high protein diets, there's several things we need to consider. One, what's the body it's going into? And as we age, we have more difficulty breaking down protein. So we have to recognize what's the receptacle the protein's going into. Protein is a really complicated chemical. It's a really complicated macronutrient for the body to digest and absorb. The other thing is, I don't know if you see this, Elisa, but I see that as people are trying to get more protein, they're adding foods into their diet that they otherwise know don't work for them. Let's say cottage cheese, when they know dairy is inflammatory for their body.
Oh,
So,
I used to
right?
love cottage cheese before I realized I had a dairy intolerance. And I wish I could still, I wish I could still eat it, but I cannot. I absolutely cannot.
And I see people adding these foods because they want more protein and they're going for the macronutrient quotient as opposed to tuning in to their own bodies. The third thing I want to say about the protein craze, which I'm glad I haven't tuned into, and I probably have more than three things, but just really quality when it comes to protein. People are adding more protein that could be inflammatory, not just for their body, but because of its quality. So I'm not saying protein is bad. I do think we need a lot of diversity and we're missing a lot of things when we go on these high protein diets. So it's a yes and
Mm.
I'm so glad I haven't gone into that wellness craze. What about you, Elisa?
Oh, I mean, probably my top three are cold plunging, which I'll break down, intermittent fasting, and
Gotta talk about it.
yeah, and and caffeine on an empty stomach,
Mm, mm.
loaded up with like the coconut oil and like as a meal. You know?
Totally.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I haven't done either of those three things has to do with the way that women respond to stressors differently than men. And, I'm really
Absolutely.
invested, as if you're here and you know my work, it's really all about how do we bring a gender specific conversation to wellness because women have been left out of medical fitness and nutrition research. And so basically like all the trendy stuff that you see is coming out of research done on men or postmenopausal women, and then women in their reproductive years try it and messes with their periods, their fertility,
Totally.
makes their perimenopause symptoms worse. So knowing that and looking at the research, cold plunging, definitely a no for me. And intermittent fasting, I'm just not a fan until you're postmenopausal. Um, and then that caffeine on an empty stomach, what a great way to like start your day, jacking up your cortisol and messing with your blood sugar. Then you're kind of chasing that the rest of the day. So those are things that I have avoided and very glad to do that because here I am at 48, still menstruating, still ovulating, not on anything. Um, and here to report from the front lines that you can feel good, not only all throughout the cycle, but all throughout your life cycle. And I think that that's something that we as women need to hear more of, which is why I was so excited to have this conversation with you because firsthand, if you do the right things to support your biology, you get so much in return. And, it's so seductive to do these quick fix, like trendy stuff, but you got to dive deeper. Um,
And you
and
got to dive deeper into yourself. And I think, I love that you brought up those three topics. And I feel like we could probably, you and I, talk for hours about those three topics in specific. But I just want to say, with some of the things you're talking about with the male body and the female body, there is a body of research that talks about stress hormesis, good stress for the body in terms of longevity practices. But if the body is already under a lot of stress, as
mm,
women in this time of life are, then we don't need more hormetic practices to give us more stress. So
oh,
something like a cold plunge,
can we
right?
put like a big underline, like brackets around that? Like we're under so much stress. How much
Yes.
more can we take?
Yes.
It's too much.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, what do we feel like, Alisa, we wish women knew today when it comes to like just simplifying? Because this stuff is made so complicated for us and takes us so far out of our own bodies. So, what are your top things that you wish all women knew?
Yes. I mean, first and foremost, if you're going to be thinking about hacks that really move the needle, let's not look to these like fun biohacks. Let's look to things that really support our hormones. So first is you got to track your cycle symptoms, right? You can use the MyFlow app, you can use whatever, but you need to know what is happening in each phase of your cycle so that you can start to connect the dots between the things that you're doing and how it's impacting your hormonal health. And because your period is that monthly hormonal health report card, right? Every bleed
Yes.
you get, every cycle you have, it's letting you know how good your ovulation was, your levels of progesterone if they are where they should be, and your ability to metabolize estrogen. So, I mean, your bleed is a great biofeedback tool, and hacking your cycle, biohacking your cycle is a key. Um, I think the other thing that I would tell everybody that really makes a difference is don't wait until you're in like crisis. We should not have
Hmm.
a relationship with our self-care that is just triage oriented. Like, oh, now I'm having heavy bleeding and fibroids and, I can't get pregnant, or now I'm having hot flashes and I'm melting into a puddle at night when I try to sleep in perimenopause. Let's not wait till we get, backed up against the wall hormonally. Let's become very proactive hormone biohackers from an early age. The earlier, the better. The longer you put effort into taking good care of yourself, the better outcomes you're going to get for longer. So do that. The third thing is eat. I say that like your Italian grandmother. Like I want you to be nourished and strong and feminine, right? I want you to think about supporting your biology the way that it needs to be supported. Your blood sugar, is something you have to manage throughout the day. If you're going like 6, 7 hours in the day without eating, kind of feeling proud, like, look how long I went between lunch and dinner, you're actually doing yourself a disservice, putting yourself in a hypoglycemic state, creating unnecessary forms of stress, recruiting extra cortisol, disrupting progesterone, and making your PMS worse, setting yourself up for earlier hormonal aging. It's not a good thing to do. I eat every 3 hours. I keep my blood sugar stable. It's like my favorite little daily game of how do I nourish myself the most? And this is different between women and men. You know, like people ask, oh, do you feed your husband the same way? I'm like, no, I barely feed him because I love him so much. So fasting for him is good, but for me, it's more continuous nourishment. Um, and then the last thing is supplementation. You know, my
Mm,
work has always been really looking at the powerful combination between macronutrients and micronutrients combined therapeutically to improve endocrine system function. So when we start thinking about bringing in some key supplements that move the needle and help your body recover faster or make more hormones successfully or metabolize estrogen a little bit better, then we're talking about, you know, expediting your results and amplifying feeling good faster. And that's, you know, what I really love. And no, you can't get most of these things in gummies. That's another fun little tidbit. They can't put therapeutic doses in gummies. And so you want the right doses of supplements as well. So
right.
those are my key things. What about you, Andrea?
Yeah,
What are the things that you think women need to be focusing on?
I love that we're both such proponents of tracking and that you have the tracking app that helps people track their cycles. And we might talk about my history with that later. But I really think that what we're talking about is tuning back into yourself. We give away so much of our agency to the wellness industry, which is a commodified industry that's constantly selling us these promises. So I just also want to underscore in what I'm going to share that the tools for optimization are not the tools for stabilization. So if you are looking to stabilize, if you're having irregular cycles or you're going through perimenopause and things are changing, or things are happening with your body from a gut level or an inflammatory level, you have to recognize that the body needs stabilization before optimization. A lot of what we're sold are tools of optimization. So I'm going to make this really simple for us. One of the things that I love to encourage people to do is to create a food chart of yes foods, no foods, and maybe foods. And let me just say what I mean by that really quickly. Your yes foods are things that you know make you feel good. Your no foods are things that you know you have a headache or some bloating after you eat them or in certain quantities. Your maybe foods you're not sure about, and you can use some help and advice working through. When we get to the place where we're like, I never feel good and I have no idea what my yes, no, and maybe foods are, that's a time to get some support because there might be things that you're doing in your everyday, talking about stress like we were earlier. Eating is the biggest stress we put on our body every single day. It's a big task that our body has to do. If you've gotten to the place where you have so few foods that you're eating, that's a time where internal healing needs to happen. We shouldn't be eating three foods or constantly managing our food to try to manage our symptoms. We have to do the internal healing. So yes, no, maybe foods is a good way to do a kind of self check. What do I know about myself and what I'm consuming every day? The second thing I want to really support is that we understand what I call the non-negotiable trifecta. What are the pieces we have to have in place before we go looking at the symptoms? Maybe not before, but simultaneous. And the non-negotiable trifecta is sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. All of those are required for your hormonal health. If you're not sleeping, you're not pooping, and your blood sugar is swinging all over the place, it is going to be hard to manage that estrogen, progesterone, whatever you're looking, even your thyroid. So there is the cascade. So sleep, poop, blood sugar balance. The third thing I want to say is that blood sugar balance does not need to be so complicated. The first thing we do is exactly what you said, eating more often, making sure we're not going into a hypoglycemic state. And I like to remind folks that fat, fiber, protein at every meal. I saw the question, how much protein do you think we need? Just start with fat, fiber, and protein at every meal. And if you don't know what those are, there's lots of resources on my website, I'm sure on your website, about where to get those good sources of fat, fiber, and protein. But just kind of breaking it down to yes, no, maybe foods. What do I know about myself? How do I focus on my non negotiable trifecta, sleep, poop, blood sugar balance? Not easy things. You might need help. I can't just say, hey, sleep. There may be things we need to really dive into with sleep. And then fat, fiber, protein at every meal or snack. Stop counting. It's likely not healthy for you.
Yeah, and I love the simplicity of what you're saying, which is, trust yourself a bit more. And I think that's the other frustrating thing about, what's out there now is this sense of, well, I need a device, or I need to be tracking, or I need something external to tell me how I'm feeling. You have this thing called proprioception where you can actually just self-observe
Exactly.
how do you respond to those foods, as Andrea was saying, and just start becoming like a citizen scientist of your own body, and just pay attention and keep these logs of your yes, no, maybe foods. See how are you getting enough sleep every night? You don't need an expensive ring to do that, to track that, right? And how are your bowel movements? I couldn't agree more with all of these great tips that Andrea just shared. So keep it simple, and how much protein, like she said, just start eating more often and see how you feel. And once you start with that first step, if you want to get more fancy and start measuring macros, you can certainly always do that later, but don't let that be the obstacle to getting yourself started with a better self-nourishment process. I
Yeah, and
wanted
the way
to
I teach
mm,
into this, sorry, Alisa, the way I teach into this is you said proprioception, which I love, and the way I teach into it is interoception. Again, we are farming so much of what we should be doing out to other people, wellness trends that come from potentially studies, but on a small select group of people, and then become a trend that isn't necessarily applicable to you. So I think the thing I want to underscore that we're both saying is that you have more answers when you slow down, take a pause, and tune into your own body of what's next, rather than following another diet or another trend or another hack that might not be appropriate for you.
even just hearing you say slow down, my whole body just took like a giant breath and inhale and exhale. I think as women, we need that reminder to be centered. Let's not be so panicked about our bodies. Where does this panic come from, and this anxiety about how to take care of ourselves come from? It comes from the fact that we're not given an education about how our hormones work, how our system's biology works, and so we're really just trying to grab hold of anything that we think might help. But it's a lot more straightforward once you understand your biology and you just start to support it. And it doesn't have to be so complicated, expensive, or overwhelming when it comes to taking care of your health. Um, I want to kind of go a little bit deeper into the trends, Andrea. What do you think? Should we talk
Yeah,
a little
let's do
bit
it.
more about intermittent fasting and ice baths, and I don't know, we could talk about protein some more too. Um,
Yeah, I'd
let's
love
start
to
with
talk
ice
about.
baths just because that's probably
Okay,
my favorite one.
go for it.
We're going to go. Somebody just asked how long is this live session? We started 10 minutes late, so we're going to go, I would say, another 10 minutes. Just so that we can try to honor everybody's time, even though I know Andrea and I could talk to you all day.
It's true.
Um, and I could listen to Andrea all day, so that's a
Same,
whole other.
same.
I need 2 days. Okay, so here's the deal with ice baths. All right. Women and men have different responses to this, and that's what I want you to know. Um, we have different vasodilation, vasoconstriction on the skin, right? And so when we're exposed to extreme temperatures, like let's talk about cold, we those vasodilation, it's very intense. We constrict very aggressively, which starts sending stress signals to the body right away. So at the same temperature that is recommended for cold plunging, that men do so well in getting that hormetic stress response, we actually have a completely different, we don't get that benefit. We don't get that hormesis. We actually just get like the bad kind of stress. And so studies have shown that we can do a cool plunge, around 55 degrees um, Fahrenheit. And, that's about 15 degrees Celsius. We can do that safely, whereas like men can do, that sort of like 1 degree Celsius cold plunge. You don't want to do that. You want to maybe do a cool plunge. The most I do is, and I only ever do it in the first half of my cycle, is at the end of the shower, I just run the water a little cool at the end and do a little cool, uh, you know, stream of water for a cup, maybe 10 seconds at most. But the second half of my cycle, I wouldn't even go near that because the body starts to run cooler as you lead up to menstruation because estrogen starts to decrease in blood serum concentration and your body, especially according to TCM, becomes a little colder, especially during menstruation. And so I do the opposite. I do things to warm up myself, drinking hot tea, even if it's 100 degrees outside, whatever I can do to stay warm. I use warming spices, ginger, etc. Yes, for first half of cycle, follicular and ovulatory, as I define it, as you guys have read in the flow, I kind of decided to shift around how we reference these things because bleeding feels like the end of the cycle, not the beginning. And it's just, that's a whole other conversation. So, so that's my take on ice baths. I think that if you're trying to deal with hormonal issues with which so many 80% of women are struggling with PMS, I would not recommend ice plunging as part of your wellness practice for sure. Andrea, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I love how you went into the vasodilation there and the differences between the male and the female body. And like you, I end my shower with a cool splash that I try to hold for about a minute. But the thing I also just want to speak into here in addition to the physiology is where we give ourselves some grace and where we notice where we're doing everything with a sensibility of grit, right? That grit that we are holding with everything we're trying to do for our bodies, to our bodies, acting like we're broken and we need fixing, and this thing is going to fix us, is adding to that stress level. It's putting us in a sympathetic dominant fight or flight state, which isn't supportive of our hormone balance. We need to be in that rest and digest. So earlier I said that that blood sugar is at the base of the hormone hierarchy and how I look at it. We're going to go from blood sugar to insulin to cortisol to thyroid to our sex hormones, the estrogen and progesterone. If we're trying to start top down, we are going to be building on quicksand. And what you just spoke to beautifully is how we're impacting that cortisol function, which again isn't supporting the hormone balance. So, again, if we could just come into the grace of giving ourselves some room, some space to build our practices, we'd be much better off. And I'm going to let the cat out. You might be able to hear the cat.
I let that cat out. I love, when you really bring in this perspective of can we just love ourselves a little bit through this whole process of wellness? Because that's really what cycle syncing was a lifeline for me to start really honoring what feels good, right?
Yes.
It doesn't feel good to push all the time, but yet, as you said, that grit, like we have this sense of I'm going to just push myself to do it, even if it doesn't feel pleasurable. Well, there's an inner GPS in your body. Like when things don't feel good, that's biofeedback telling you maybe this isn't the right thing for you. If you step into an ice bath and afterwards you feel exhausted, or if you go yet to I don't know, a boot camp class or a spin class in your luteal phase and you do an hour of this sort of high intensity cardio and you are literally like, exhausted for the rest of the afternoon, that's biofeedback from your body saying that wasn't the right wellness choice for you today. And I want you to like feel it and learn from it and don't keep pushing yourself through things that make you feel bad, right? You should feel good, and things that bring you pleasure and boost that oxytocin and all of that is definitely something that you want to be thinking about from a biohacking perspective. And I love, love, love that perspective. All right, let's talk about, we talked about ice baths. Let's talk about intermittent fasting.
Oh
What's
my
your,
gosh, I was like, are we
come on,
opening
let's
that
hear
can of
it.
worms?
Let me hear
So, first of all,
it.
again, we need the rest and digest. So, there is a time period where it does work not to be eating and for the body to get into that state. I actually have a three-part video series on the Functional Nutrition Alliance YouTube page about intermittent fasting. And is it therapeutic? Is it tradition? Is it triggering? You know, it can be all of those different things. So, we have to be in a state where our body is ready for that. And while we're going through, while we're cycling, while we're in perimenopause, even when we are going through the menopausal years, when it's not quite postmenopausal, we may be having enough going on that we don't need that added stress. So I will be honest that 12 hours is super easy for me. I'm a morning eater. When it comes to the evening, I feel done. I don't want to eat again personally until I'm up in the morning. So 12 hours is easy.
And that
14
is the
hours,
golden fast. That
that is the
12, that
golden fast.
everyone should do that. That's dinner to breakfast. You shouldn't be eating, overnight. Your body doesn't need it. And that is beneficial. So we're not talking about the golden fast. We're talking about that intermittent fasting where you basically don't eat. You have that like souped up MCT oil kind of latte for breakfast, and then you don't eat until lunch. This is the kind of fasting
Yes.
we're talking about.
And there's many different ways that intermittent fasting is defined. And one of the guests that I have on that YouTube series is a researcher in intermittent fasting. And one of the things I love about her work is she talks about how there's fewer research papers on intermittent fasting and its benefits than there are books on the shelf in the bookstore. And that's very indicative of a wellness trend, right? We've taken a small bit of research, we've capitalized on it, and then we're selling it as some solution without looking at the individual needs. And so
Mm.
with intermittent fasting, when we start pushing into that grit area, I can do this. I'm putting stress on my body because this is the number of hours I'm supposed to meet. We are not doing the body good. And I think that's where we have to really tune in and listen to what are we trying to achieve here? What kind of added stress are we putting on the body? And where are we nutrient depleted? That is also, like you speak about so beautifully, impacting not just our blood sugar, but our nutrient needs that serve us throughout the day. So I am not a fan of the trend of intermittent fasting and how it's become such a hack that is even sold through like powders and packets and measurements. We do need to make sure that the body is in the graceful state of managing all that we have to manage.
Oh, it's just so good to hear someone say this, like, it's not an optimal thing for women to do because you're right, it is oversold, overmarketed, and it really does play into that,
Totally.
diet culture that women have been conditioned for,
Absolutely.
decades, like you need to shrink, then fundamentally just eat less. And I think we also have that wound around, we don't understand how our hormones work, or we're being left out of research. We're kind of left in the dark. And so there's this
Yes.
seduction around getting control back through
Yes.
restriction that I think intermittent fasting is like, it's a perfect storm of something that seems like it would be good for you, but then this is what I shared in my second book, In the Flow, looking at why I definitely don't endorse it for women in the reproductive years, just to be clear right off the bat, is that the studies are pretty clear. The few that have been done in the female ecosystem, it's the opposite. All the beautiful benefits that you get from intermittent fasting as a male and a postmenopausal woman you don't get in your reproductive years. You get stress on the thyroid, you get ovarian shrinkage, you get disruption in ovulation, disruption in your blood sugar, dysregulated moods, increased risk for anxiety and depression, weight gain, decreased fertility. I don't
Yes.
there's nothing valuable for you here in the reproductive years. And why? Why is it such a problem? Well, let's just not forget that you, every month, every cycle, you do something pretty incredible, which is you manufacture a little organelle out of the foods that you eat called the endometrium. You do that every single month. You make tissue structure and then you shed that tissue structure in your menstrual cycle. That's pretty remarkable and requires calories and requires micronutrients. And if we're not eating, that's not going to happen as efficiently and optimally as possible. So I think from a hormone regulation perspective, a hormonal longevity perspective, I'm a hard no on intermittent fasting. Skipping meals is not like a badge of honor. It's really a fast track to hormonal burnout. And I try to convince women to just eat more because not only are you going to feel better, but your PMS is going to go away, right? Not to mention in the second half of your cycle, you need 279 more calories per day than you do in the first half. So even if you were thinking about doing any kind of fasting, definitely don't do it after ovulation because you will absolutely start to increase a cortisol sort of recruitment to help deal with your destabilized blood sugar levels, which will then downregulate progesterone production and exacerbate your PMS. And that's just within one cycle. You keep doing that cycle over cycle, you could dysregulate ovulation and you could start to age the ovary faster. So I'm a no, definitely a
Yeah,
no.
and I think, Alisa, in what we're saying here is when you are fed these trends or these hacks and you become a like, why I want to do that. Ask yourself why. What am I
Mm.
looking to achieve and what is that going to do for me? And sometimes the why may lead to a answer within us that needs a little bit more exploration because it is about control. It is about our body shape and size and how that's changing and where we want to have some control there. And that might not be the right reason for doing the intervention that you're doing. So I just want to insert the why into the equation.
So good. Such a good thing. And I'm somebody who's been obese, technically speaking, 3 times. I've been 210 pounds 3 times. First, when my PCOS was raging as a late teenager, and then for both of my pregnancies. And let me assure you that my path to now I'm 130 pounds, right, have maintained that for a long time. That has been through eating, not fasting. And so I'm just also here, not as an academic sort of perspective on why this is maybe not a good thing. I'm also living the experience of being deeply nourished and seeing the benefits from a body composition perspective and a hormonal perspective. And that's really what everybody deserves. We deserve to feel strong in our bodies and nourished. Okay, so much more to talk about, but we
I
do
know
have to
it
kind of
kind
start
of leads
wrapping
me
things up. So let's just talk about
a takeaway. Should we have one takeaway? Yours led me perfectly. What you just said
let's hear.
led
I
me
would love to hear
perfectly.
your takeaway.
I think it is that grace. I think that what I've discovered in my time in this industry and managing my own Hashimoto's and grief and all of the things that I've been through now as a postmenopausal woman is the grace of recognizing that health isn't a narrow line. It's not about doing more, doing it right, being shamed when something does come up in my body because we are aging and things are going to occur in our bodies. And I don't want to feel shame that I did something wrong or I didn't do it right. And so I feel like health has to have this wiggle room. And that's when health is really healthy. It is joy. It is doing the things that really give us meaning and purpose. And I feel like the wellness industry has boxed us or backed us into a corner where there's a right and a wrong way. We are always being sold more. We always have to do more. And I just want to invite everybody to take a deep breath. Make sure you have time for that pause. Tune into yourself. Listen to your body, but listen to your heart. Listen to your soul. Listen to your spirit. There are messages that support our body and our hormones when we are living our truest and most authentic lives.
This is why I love hanging out with you, Andrea. You're
Oh,
just, I'm so inspired. Your words are like a balm to our feminine spirit, and I just could not encourage people more to listen to the beautiful takeaway that you just shared. Um, I would say, as I always like to say, I love to keep it simple. I have so much going on. I have two young kids. I run a company and, I do a lot of strength training. I'm a busy person. And so in order to curate and navigate and try to figure out what all this wellness should be for myself, I always come at it through the lens of, what is going to support my actual biology, right? And I want the form of my self care to support the function of my biology and my hormones, and to really be through that lens that I make all the decisions. Like, is this really good for me? And if it's
yes.
not, then just to feel no guilt about saying, yeah, I'm not going to do that, or I don't need to do that. And I try to have less on my plate when it comes to self care. I certainly follow my cyclical patterns to really allow me to schedule things throughout the month, that instead of feeling overwhelmed that I have to do all the things each and every day, I give myself more space and grace to take care of myself differently in each phase of the cycle. And, yeah, as a lot of you are saying, one of your big takeaways is eat. And yes, be nourished, you know, and try to find ways to follow things that make you feel good and joyful, because that oxytocin molecule is so fundamentally healing for the body. And if you
Oh,
can be more in joy, in community, in pleasure, it's the greatest biohack that you could ever give yourself, on top of everything else that we talked about today. And Andrea, thank you so much for your beautiful wisdom, your voice of reason in the chaos of the wellness world, and all your work over the past 3 decades, inspiring us and leading us through um, all of these health journeys. It's such a joy to be chatting with you today.
right back at you, Alisa. And I feel like we scratched the surface. I want to talk hormones with you. So maybe we'll be back at another time. Let us know if you're interested in Alisa and I talking about bioidenticals and our journeys. Happy to talk about that. And thank you for the work you do and for being in this important conversation. So, mwah, such beautiful wisdom.
So great. Okay, everybody, have a beautiful day. I hope that you got some soul nourishment, some mental nourishment, and you're ready to take care of your hormones and your body in a more gentle, feminine, nourished way. And we'll definitely come back and do something fun again. This was really fun. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.